Hello. In this video, we're going to talk about strings. So you already know what a string is. We've already encountered strings many times. A string is just some representation of a piece of text. And you can create a string either with double quotes like this or with single quotes. Those two are equivalent. So these are things you know, but now we're going to go a little bit deeper. We're going to learn techniques for creating strings, for manipulating strings, and also for extracting information from strings. So let's get started. The work of engineers and scientists tends to be very number heavy, and so we use primarily numerical data types such as the NumPy array. Other fields are more string-based, such as if you're working with the internet or if you're working with text analysis. That said, there are some important use cases for strings in engineering and science, and I've listed a few of them here. So whenever we're interacting with the user, for example, if we're using the input built-in method, that is, we get input from the keyboard, and that information comes into our program in the form of a string. When we read data from a file, it first comes into the program as a string, and if it's numerical information, we need to know how to convert that data into a numerical data type. Writing data to files, that's the opposite. So we can have numerical data in our program, and we need to format it appropriately into a string to put it in a file. We also use strings quite a bit when we plot, for example, for making legends and titles, and again, we may have numerical information in the program that we want to write into the legends and titles of our plots. So we need to know how to go from strings to data, numerical data, and from numerical data to strings. And we're going to learn that in the next video. The first thing to say about strings is that they are sequences. And that means, as we saw in a previous video, that we can index them, we can slice them, and we can unpack them. So let's try this out. I'm going to define a string here called CF, appearances can be deceptive, period. We can index this. This is like a sequence of characters. So if I say CF0, I get the first character. That's the A. If I say CF up to 4, I get APPE. I can also add skip value. So if I go all the way to the end, but I'm going to get every other letter, I can do that. Or I could invert it. If I went beginning to end, but in the opposite or backward direction, it just inverts the string. Okay. By virtue of it being a collection, I can get its length. That is the number of characters in the string. Also, I can check if the string contains a particular character using the in keyword. So is a period in CF? Indeed it is. So this should give me a true. Also with strings, we can do a little bit of arithmetic. That means that we can use a summation of two strings. So if I say CF plus CF, that is going to give me appearances can be deceptive, and then followed by or concatenated with appearances can be deceptive. If I, let's say I wanted to put a space in there, I could say space and then another plus. So this is the string CF plus a string space plus a string CF. And then multiplication of strings you can do with an integer, not string, but a string times an integer. And that will do exactly what you think it's going to do. So it's going to concatenate CF, in this case, 2 times. Now, this can be useful, for example, for creating a bar. If I do this and I multiply that by 40, I get 40 dashes. So that'll come in handy maybe later. Strings, apart from being sequences, are also objects, and so they have methods attached. Many of those methods are useful, so let's have a look at them. To aid us, I have defined here some strings, And we can get a list of the methods attached to the string using the autocomplete feature of JupyterLab. So here we have them. These are all of the methods attached to strings. That's quite a few. So we're not going to learn all of those. I've made a reduced list here on the right with the methods that I find most useful. So let's go through that. First category is methods used for searching a string. We have string.startsWith and endsWith, and that will tell me if a string either starts or ends with a particular substring. Okay, we can use that, for example, if we wanted to check that this URL is using the secure form of the HTTP protocol. And we do that, we'd say starts with HTTPS. If it starts with HTTPS, then it is using the secure protocol. Otherwise, it's not. Ends with. An example of using ends with would be to check the extension of a file. So if I wanted to see if this is an MP4 file, I would say filename.endswith.mp4. That would give me true, but if I said .avi, it would give me false. Okay, find. This is going to give me the index of the first occurrence of a particular substring. So if I said find AVI in this file name, it's not there. So that's going to give me a -1. But if I said find.mp4, it's going to give me 11. That means that this dot, the first character in .mp4, is at position 11 in this file name. So if I said file name from 11 to 14 or 15, then I'd get .mp4. Okay, count. That's going to count the number of occurrences of a particular substring in the string. So in that file name, I have only one occurrence of .mp4, but the URL has how many occurrences of a slash? It has 5 slashes in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. How about modifying a string? We can use methods to quote-unquote modify a string. Why quotes? Because, as you know, strings are immutable. That means that they cannot be modified. So rather than modifying a string, what we do is we create a new string with the modifications that, that we've requested. So let's have a look at that. If I wanted, for example, to replace the MP4 in the file name with AVI, I could say filename.replace.mp4 with .avi. And that will do what I expect it to do. Now it says .avi instead of .mp4. But if I now look at the value of file name, that has not been modified. It's still .mp4. So this method is returning a new string that I can save if I want, .avi file name, for example. And now AVI file name has the value myhomevideo.avi, whereas file name is still the MP4 file. Okay, so .lower, that takes a string and reduces all of the uppercase letters to lowercase. That can be useful, for example, here I have an email address, and if I'm storing email addresses, I might make the assumption that they're case insensitive. So I wouldn't want duplicates. If I had Chad Feldheimer with lowercase at AOL.com, I would want to make sure that that's equivalent to this Chad Feldheimer with some uppercases at AOL.com. So when I read an email, I might convert it to lowercase. Okay. Strip. This also, when one reads information from a file, for example, it can come with a white space on either end. here's an example of this. If I look at this line, I'm going to delete some of these. If I look at this line, it has a tab character at the beginning, then it has a carriage return character and a space at the end. So if I use print to print this line, it's actually going to print that tab character and print the carriage return as well. Now, if I want to get rid of those, I can say line.strip, and now it's going to remove all of the trailing white space and all of the leading white space. So I can call this a clean line, and now I have a white space less line, and I still have my original line. Okay, the next category of items is methods that take us from a string to a list or from a list to a string. Now this is very common. We often have what's known as comma-separated values. We could have a file that contains the information of a table where each row in the file is a row of the table and the columns are separated by commas. So this would be an example of that. This could be a row in that file, and the first value is the first column. Maybe that's some sort of a code, the code for this movie. The second value might be a float, maybe related to the price of the movie. And the third may be an integer, the number of views of the movie. So we want to extract that information from this string. So first we need to split the string into those three values, and for that we use the string.split method. So I can take my values string and say split, and then I am going to enter the delimiter. That is normally a comma, but it could be something else. So when I run this, now I get a list that has three items in it, the first, the second, and the third. And if I wanted to now turn these into numbers, I could say x1, which is the 25.3, and I can cast that as a float and save that as, what did I say? It was the price of the movie. And then the other one, x2, I could cast it as an integer, and we said that was the number of views. Okay, so that's how I extract numerical information from strings. Now going in the other direction, let's say I have this information and I want to turn it into a comma-separated string, then I use the join method. And let's do an example of that. I could have the values were they started with TT and then some numbers, and then a view time, or no, a price. So that could be 74.6, and then the number of views, 218. Now I'm going to separate these with commas, and this is the interesting thing. I make the string of the delimiter, and then I call the join method on that string, and I pass in the list. Now, it's necessary here that this list consists only of strings. So I'm going to cast each one of these into a string. And for now, we're just using a very simple method, that is using the string constructor. In the next video, we're going to see how to do fancier formatting or fancier conversion from numerical methods to strings using the format method and fstrings. I'll see you then. Bye.